Welcome back, everybody, to day 13 of Foundations of Programming. Yesterday, we, I would say we got close to completing lesson 9, which was importing modules, exception handling, and unit tests. And we got to the last assignment for the lesson, which was LemonadeStand.py, which was essentially a culmination of everything that we've learned up to this point. Probably the toughest assignment that you would have for the entirety of this course, if you're curious. Um, it's not too bad. I'm assuming a lot of you guys got through most of it, if not all of it already. We took about an hour yesterday for some work. You guys had the option of either staying here in the call or doing on your own. 'Cause I know a lot of it's a long process. But a show of hands, or you come on the mic if you'd like to. Who completed Lemonade Stand Up High? I see Tim wants to say something.
I completed the functions, but I didn't get to the main method or to the testing.
Okay. Yeah, we will. I think what's going to happen is we're going to take the first 45 minutes of class to go ahead and finish off Eliminate Stand Up High. Once that's done, we'll go on a 10-minute break and we will code along from start to finish the entirety of Eliminate Stand Up High, as well as answering any questions as we go through. That'll be the first part of class. Um, and the second part of class will be let's see what we have on the calendar, which I believe is going to be importing files and reading them. Uh, Let me open it up real quick. And actually, what we might do is actually instead of 45 minutes, we'll take 30. Because we already spent about an hour on it. I want to make sure we are able to get through the entirety of the curriculum. So we'll take 30 minutes. I'm opening up my calendar right now. I apologize for any delay. But yeah, after eliminate stand.py, it should be start rewrite file, which is good because we're getting back on track. Today it was technically supposed to be the entirety today eliminate stand.py, but I would like to kind of start on reading and writing files today to give us more time to work on uh, Space Invaders this week. So yeah, we'll take 30 minutes between now and 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. we'll come back. I'll try to get the entire eliminate stand.py done within 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll go on a 10-minute break, and we should be able to start reading and write files. So let's go ahead and start that now, and I will see you guys at 6 p.m. here. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start the eliminate stand.py. We should all be looking at my VS Code right now. And we're going to do a kind of walkthrough of the entirety of the assignment. If at any point we encounter something that you have a question on, do not hesitate to stop me, and then I will address it as best as I can. So we have, as you might have already noticed, a large variety of different classes that we have to make here. And one of the things that you might have already encountered is the fact that these classes and methods seem to kind of be just a lot of code, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to isolate every single class within its own file to ensure I have good code readability and I don't get confused or have to scroll multiple times to encounter what I'm looking for. So as we go through, I'm going to create a different file for my menu item, my cells for day, and my eliminate stand. And then I should have an overall file that will bring this all together, right? So real quick, within my eliminate stand directory, I'm going to create a new file. And this is going to be my menu.py. I'm also going to create another one, which will be cells.py. And I'll keep that for now, just like this, menu and sales, and then we will come and address them as needed. So the description on the assignment says that I have to create classes of menu item, sales for date, and LemonadeStand. All data members of each class should be marked as private. That means we have to prefix every data attribute with underscores. So a leading underscore in the name, it should be a leading double underscore, as we've already seen, to make them private. And if we need to access them from outside a class, we should do it via a get or a set method. The first class we're going to talk about is going to be the menu item. So I'm going to define menu item. Oh, and I apologize. I am in the sales.py file. Let's go ahead and switch. And let's just increase the readability of our stuff here. Let me know if it's too big or too small, and we can address as needed. So I'm going to create class menu item. And I'm going to give it the init method. And a lot of these are going to be very simple, pretty much very similar until we get into the actual methods. The menu item object represents a menu item to the offered for sale at the LemonadeStand, which has 3 data members, a string for the item's name, a float for the item's wholesale cost, and a float for the item's selling price. And because it takes 3 data members, we also have to take into account, does it take arguments for all 3 of these? And we see here that the menu item within the init method, it tells us that it does take 3 parameters, one being name, wholesale cost. I can say wholesale or wholesale cost. I'll say wholesale cost. And selling price. Now we can also do type hints, which I believe is what it's called, where we can add the type of data type that our parameter should be. So the name should be a string. The wholesale cost needs to be a float. And the selling price has to be a float as well. Right? These are not mandatory. These do not declare that they are hard-coded to just be this. This is to increase your code scalability and readability as your code gets bigger, right? For simple classes, simple programs, you might not need this, but as you start creating much more complex programs, this can help you understand what your classes should be taking. Afterwards, we're going to assign these parameters into the data attributes. So we'll say self._name is equal to name. Self._wholesale cost. And I forgot a period here. Wholesale cost is equal to wholesale cost. And selling price is equal to selling price. Pretty straightforward for the init method. Then we need to create get methods for each of the data members. So another one, straightforward, define get name, return self._name, define get wholesale cost, and return self._wholesale cost. Finally, get selling price. Return self._selling price. All right. And that's going to conclude my menu item, right? Pretty straightforward. It has a basic init method and some basic get methods to receive each one of these private data members. Do I have any questions on the menu item? Okay. So let's go ahead and go and move on to our sales for date. This is going to be a class called sales for day. And it should have an init method that takes in 2 parameters. The number of days and sales, which is going to be a dictionary. So how do we name it? So sales for date. Essentially, this is an object that represents the sales for a particular day, which has 2 data members. an integer for the number of days this stat has been open so far. So essentially what day this sales belongs to. And a dictionary whose keys are the names of the items sold, and those values are the numbers of those items sold that day. Okay. So the first parameter is what day this sales belongs to. Maybe number of days can be a little confusing. So we can say something like day and sales. Just keep it simple. And day is going to be, as we saw, an integer, while sales is a dict for dictionary. Next, we assign these parameters to self._day is equal to day. And then self._sales is equal to an empty dictionary, I think. Come on, let me see. No. Okay, so it doesn't take an empty dictionary. It's going to take a dictionary. So we can't have a record of a sale for the specific day if we haven't had any sales. So we could probably do something like maybe sales is equal to an empty dictionary. I don't know if that's going to work. To have the default in the event, because I mean, what happens if you don't sell anything? Because that could happen, right? It should be an empty dictionary. But you want it so you have the ability to pass in a dictionary that does have a record, right? So maybe just setting it straight off to sales is equal to sales. Let's set a default to be an empty dictionary, just so we are aware that if we don't add a record of what happened on this day, it'll just by default leave an empty dictionary. So we're aware of that, right? So we can set a default just like we do in functions within the parameters. And then we let our data attribute of _sales know that it's supposed to be whatever is being passed in here, whether it's an actual dictionary or the default that we have preset. And because we are specifying here that the default is a dictionary, then we don't have to do this where we specify that this is a dict, right? And you see here, we even start getting an issue. It's kind of self-explanatory. These are curly braces. It's probably a dictionary, right? And then finally, we need to also add a little note here to let us know what exactly is the structure of this dictionary, right? Because if we start working with this, it might get a little confusing. So the dictionary, if we look at it, is where the keys are the names of the items sold. So key item sold, and the value is number of the item sold. Right, or we can just say item name, and then the value is number of items sold. There we go. I feel like it's a little bit more self-explanatory. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our cells for day get methods. We say define get day, which return to us the date data member, and we'll say get cells date, and we will return cell._sales. All right. Any questions so far? None at all. Okay. Right on.
One quick one.
Yes.
Whenever you create an object for this class, couldn't you also just leave sales as sales without the dictionary? And then in that object creation put an empty dictionary, or what is it like better to put it in that initialization?
You could. Yeah, that would work just as fine. I mean, you would have to do something like February 15 sales is equal to sales per day. And then you would pass in, what day it is. It's supposed to be an integer, so we could say 15. And then yes, you would have like an empty dictionary here, right? But this just saves you the trouble of even having to establish an empty dictionary. I think we would have to do something like sales is equal to open close parentheses or curly braces and say sales. But to be honest, I think they should work anyways. But yeah, it just saves you the extra time. In the event you don't have sales, you don't have to add a curly brace. It's not like a big thing. It's not gonna break your code if you don't do this. It's just personal preference, right? So now I can create an empty dictionary or an empty record for the sales for the day the 15th. To be with no actual record of sales, right? It don't matter. Whichever way you do it, it's okay. No personal preference. Both will work. Does that answer your question, Jace? Awesome. So we took care of our sales for day, our menu. Let's go ahead and move on to the LemonadeStand.py. And this is going to hold the entirety of LemonadeStand, and then I'm going to make a main.py to bring all three of these together. As we can see, the LemonadeStand.py is probably the biggest one of these. And they can get very conflicting as we start adding more code. So we are going to isolate LemonadeStand.py on its own, and then we're going to make a different file called main.py where we can bring all three of these classes together and do the actual functionality. All right, LemonadeStand.py. So we're going to create our LemonadeStand. Remember that the LemonadeStand class must not directly access the private data members of menu item and sales for date, right? So in my LemonadeStand class want to access what day a specific cell is, how do we grab that date? Well, we use the get method of getDate, right? We should not be directly accessing any attribute unless we have a get method for it. All right, that's the whole purpose of this, to encapsulate the class's code within themselves and only give access to who you want to give access to. So the LemonadeStand object represents a LemonadeStand, which has 4 data members. And as we see here, even though it has 4 data members, the init method only takes 1 parameter. So let's go ahead and define our init method. It's going to take itself, and the only parameter it's going to take is the name of the stand. So we can say name of stand. And then I'm going to assign the data attribute of name is equal to name of stand. That way I know exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the name of the LemonadeStand, right? And this is going to be a string, right? If I'm correct? Yeah, a string for the name of the stand. So we'll say string. So although we have the init method with that 1 parameter, we know that it takes it's supposed to instantiate other data attributes as well. One is the name of the stand, which initializes that name to that value. And then it's supposed to initialize the current day to 0. Right? So it's an integer representing the current day. So we'll say self._ current day is equal to 0. So we hard code this in here. Because by default, when you first make a stand, right, you don't just open up a new Burger King on day 15. You know what I'm saying? So by default, it's going to be on day 0. And then the third attribute is going to be a dictionary of menu item objects, where the keys are the names of the items and the values are the corresponding menu item objects, right? So essentially, we have to create a menu that this LemonadeStand.py is going to have. So self._ menu, and we'll just leave it at menu, I think. Yeah, we just see we'll leave it at menu. It's equal to a dictionary of menu item objects, right? And let's go ahead and add a note here where the key is supposed to be names of the item. So item name. And the value is the corresponding menu item object. So we'll say menu item object. All right. So now if I ever have to know what this dictionary is supposed to hold and how, I can just come up here and I see item name and then menu item object. And finally, the last data attribute or data member is supposed to be a list of sales for day. So we'll say all sales. All right, so all sales will be in here. You can put all sales or sales record, right? Because technically that's what it is, right? You can put ledger, whatever you want to call this to make sense in your scenario. You can call it whatever your heart desires. All right, but I'll just put all sales. And then add another note here to see what it's supposed to be and say it's a list of sales for day objects. Any questions on the init method? Yeah, so by default, whenever you create a new stand, the only thing that you will have the option to customize is going to be the name of your stand. Everything else is by default instantiated to an empty menu, an empty record of sales, and your current day starts at 0. That takes care of the init method. Let's go ahead and move on to the get methods. And it looks like it's only one get method. So define get method. And this is the name of the stand. So we're going to return self._name. And I did oopsies here. So it's not get method, it's get stand name. We'll say that, or get name. We'll keep it the same. Constant. Get name. All right. That takes care of essentially the foundation of everything else. Everything up to this point has been fairly simple. Now let's add some functionality to this lemonade stand. The first actual method here is adding a menu item, right? So we're going to define the method add menu item. And it takes as a parameter a menu item object. So we can say menu item, and this is supposed to be an object. It takes a menu item object and adds it to the menu dictionary. New items can be added to the menu on any day. So it doesn't matter what day it is, we can just add items to our menu. So how do we access this dictionary that holds the menu?
Use a get.
Can you just use? Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, Chess. I'm saying use a get. So menu
Well,
dot. You could do menu dot get item to see if it exists.
yeah,
And
we
then
can
if it
check if
does-
it exists.
If it doesn't, just add it.
Yeah, that's perfect. And as a matter of fact, we don't even have to do menu get. We can say if menu item in self._menu. And why do you think this is going to work? Is this the same as accessing an item in the list? Can we do this? Well, first and foremost, how are the keys of this menu item set? Well, it's supposed to be an item name, not an object, an item name, right? So you want to check if something's in the keys, we can say if menu item, and we know that the argument being passed in is an object. It's an object of what? Of a menu item. Well, how do we grab the name of that menu item? Get name.
Get name.
So we can say if menu item dot get name. which will return to me the name that this specific menu item has. And then we can check if it's in this dictionary, right? It's going to check all the names, right? So we can do this to check if it's in there. We don't necessarily have to do the get method, because we have access to his name, and we could just do it this way. And it works different than a list, and I'll tell you why. In a list, how do we access items in a list? What's the terminology for it?
Like the index.
Yeah, by index, right? Index notation. We either have to know the index of something, or we have to loop through it. So when I say if something is in a list, what's happening under the hood?
It's just working through the whole list looking for that name, right?
Correct. It starts a for loop from start to end. It's going to loop through every single item. It doesn't do that with a dictionary. Dictionaries do not use index notation. They use key value pairs. The key works as a form of an address. So the way that it accesses these keys is instant. Unlike a list where it's not instant, you have to loop through every single item. In a dictionary, by using the in operator, we're actually accessing the item instantaneously, right? So both will work. And I bring this up because one is faster than the other, right? Whereas if you try to check if something's in a list, if you have 1 million items, it's going to take forever to find if it's in there, right? Because there's so many items to loop through. Whereas if you had 1,000 or 1 million items in a dictionary, it'll take the same amount of time every single time because it uses that key to check if it's in there, right? So we don't necessarily have to use get. We can just use in. And I'll say if menu item dot get name is in self dot underscore menu, then I want to say print this menu item or this item already exists in our menu. Else self dot underscore menu. And we're going to add the menu item. And as we've seen here of how this dictionary is broken up, we need to add the name as the key and then assign the entire object itself as the value. Anybody have any questions?
So I thought we only cared about the text for this for the value of these items.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase your question? What do you mean?
So I thought earlier you said for the value of the menu items, for the value of the menu keys within the menu object, we only cared about the text. This way, the menu, the key and the value are going to be the same, the text value. Is that right?
Negative. This is going to have the string name of our menu item, correct?
Yeah.
And then we are assigning the entire object itself into the value because that's what menu item is. It's an object. Is that what you're referring to?
It is. I thought I was a little bit confused by something you said earlier. I thought you were saying that we were only going to put the string value in the value. Maybe I misheard you, but okay, that's fine.
Did I? I'm sorry. I don't want to make sure. I want to make sure no one's confused. Did I say that? Can someone correct me? What exactly did I say? And I'm not quite sure if I remember the context of what I was talking about. I talk a lot. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I say anything wrong, do bring it up, please, and kind of try to quote me so I can kind of remember what I said. Maybe I misspoke. I hope I didn't confuse any of you guys. We need to add a menu item, right? And as we know, the dictionary of this menu, the way it's structured, it has the item name as a string, right? And we can see that up here. A dictionary where the menu item objects, or a dictionary of menu item objects, where the keys are the names of the items and the values are the corresponding menu item objects. So the key is a string and the value is an actual object. right? That's how this self._menu data attribute is established. So therefore, when I want to add something new to it, I have to ensure that I have the name of what item I'm trying to add. And then I save the value of that object in here, right? Well, what's
Would
being
you?
passed? Come again?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I don't mind when people interrupt because I know it can be confusing sometimes, and I'd rather you ask a question and solve whatever is confusing before I can move on. What's going on, Tim?
Oh, it's not a confusion. It's would you ever do this a different way that's a little bit faster? Would you ever
And
use the menu dot set default instead of doing it this way? Because it takes care of the if statement and provides the value if it doesn't exist.
menu dot set default. What do you mean set default?
Set the method set default. It searches an object for something you're searching for. In this case, it would be menu item dot get name, and if it doesn't find it, then you can tell it to, okay, it doesn't exist, create it using this value in this key, or this key in this value.
I've never used that method, but it sounds like a very handy one. A lot of things there's different ways of doing things. If you guys find a cool method that's now out there that people can use, or you like doing that, by all means. There's obviously better ways to do different things. But I think it is good practice to at least check if it's in here, because when you try to add something with the same key, it'll override the previous one. So you might lose what a value you set there if you've already had something before. That's something to keep in mind. The values might be different. Who knows, right? So, but in regards to that method that you brought up, I've never used it. It sounds like a really interesting and helpful method. So if it does the same thing that this is doing, why not? Does that answer your question, Tim?
It does, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, let's go ahead and continue moving forward. We have the add menu item, which adds a new key value pair into our data member of menu. That takes care of this. Let's go ahead and move on to enter cell for today, and then we'll go on a 10-minute break. So the enter cell.
Honestly, I think this is where it got hard for me. I was pretty much up through add menu item, and then the enter sales for today is where I struggled.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for bringing it up. I'll make sure that I take it slow on this one so we can all understand. So the method is enter sales for today. And it takes as a parameter a dictionary where the keys are the names of items sold and the corresponding values are how many of the items were sold. Okay. So this sounds familiar. Where did I see this? Where did I see this structure? It takes as parameter a dictionary where the keys are names of items sold and the corresponding values are how many of the items were sold. Well, this is an enter sales for today. So what I can assume here is that I'm going to add sales to my all sales ledger, right? My records. But what is this data member? This is a list of sales for day objects, right? So whenever I add a new cell, it has to be an object, right? Because that's how I'm keeping track of this. Well, here's my sales object. The way that my sales object is structured is one, it has the day that it belongs to, and then it has the actual sales itself for this day. Well, the structure of the sales is a dictionary where the key is the item name and the value is the number of that item that I have sold. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm entering the sales for today. I'm going to have to create a sales for day object, which I will add to my all sales record. Does that make sense? Let's continue reading. If an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales of that item on that day. So if an item in our menu, right, here's our menu, doesn't appear in the dictionary that's being passed in, then obviously what that means is there were no sales for that item on the day. For example, if I sold hamburgers and hot dogs, and then the sales for this day, I sold 8 hot dogs, but there's no record of me selling any hamburgers, that tells me I didn't sell any hamburgers for this day. Is that correct? Everyone with me? Okay. So if an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales of that item on that day. If the name of any item sold doesn't match the name of any menu item in the dictionary of menu item objects, this method should do nothing except raise an invalid sales item error. Right? This is an error, as you see here in the name, but this is not an actual native error that comes with Python, right? There's no such thing as an invalid sales error. So you'll need to define this exception class, which we talked about yesterday. So that means if I only sell hot dogs and hamburgers, but at the end of the day, I'm closing down shop and I'm going to go ahead and write in my records what I sold for the day. For some reason, I sold a pizza, and that's wrong. Like, I don't even provide this service, so I need to raise an error. Hey, this is an invalid sales item error. Like, there's no way that I sold a pizza. Or how are you going to try to give me this dictionary telling me that I sold a pizza when I don't have a pizza in my menu? Make sense? So in the event something in this record that I'm being passed into this method does not match my menu, then I need to raise an error. But if it does, everything checks out, I should create a new sales for day object using the current date of what today is and the dictionary that was passed in within the method, and add that object to the list of sales for day objects, and then increment the current day by 1. So if I'm done with my day and I update my sales record, then that means my day is complete, right? I'm done sales. I've updated my record. I'm ready to close up shop. I need to also update my day to ensure that it represents tomorrow, because that's tomorrow's day, and that's when I have a new sales, right? Everyone with me so far on what this is asking of us?
Almost.
Okay.
It says if it throws that invalid sales item error, that's all. It just says just throw it if it can't find it. But then it says otherwise, you should create a new sales for the day object. So you're saying if there's an error, don't add it to the ledger?
Correct. So this method should do nothing except raise an invalid sales item error. So if there's something that does not match, then we should do nothing else except raise an invalid sales item error, and that's it. Nothing else.
So the entire
Otherwise-
day's sales won't be calculated, right?
Correct. That's all it takes. Right? Now, is this where you guys were getting confused? Should do nothing except raise an invalid sales item error. Right? So if someone is trying to, for example, if I had, like, imagine this real world scenario. And I have a website where I track all my records, right? All my finances, everything from my lemonade stand, and I'm trying to update my records. And I look at my records and I put pizza into my application, my website. Then it shouldn't add pizza into my records. It should stop me there, like, hey, you don't have this in your menu, right? So it shouldn't add anything. So then I should go back and actually fix the input. So that's what this is doing. It's keeping you from adding something that does not exist. Because even if you try add it, realistically, once you guys start working your backend and try add it into your database, like there should be an issue there because it's not there, right? You shouldn't have stuff in your records that does not exist. So this is like a fail safe, if that makes sense. You shouldn't be adding anything else. Maybe there's something wrong with your ledger. Just you as a developer, as a user, it lets you know like there's something wrong with my records, so you can go back and fix it. And then once you're ready, you can come back and then give it the correct input. Make sense? All right. So as a parameter, a dictionary where the keys are names of the item, right? So we can say today's sales or current day sale, whatever you want to call it, current day sales. And then this is going to be a dict. So I know that's supposed to be a dictionary. Now, if you're wondering, well, where do I get this information from? You're going to have to make it. If you would have came down to the bottom, you would see there's an example of that. Day 0 sales. This is a dictionary where we have lemonade as a key, and then how many of those lemonades we sold. Cookies, and how many cookies, right? And we can keep this here just to ensure we can visualize, see what we're adding here. But this is what it looks like. This is the dictionary that will be added into the enter sales for today. It's just a record of what was sold. So let's go ahead and break it down. So we're going to take the dictionary. If an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales of the item day. So let's kind of do some pseudocode. Check the dict passed as an argument if the item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales. Okay. So after we grab the argument, we have to check dict passing as an argument. Ensure all items exist in menu. Right. If the name of an item sold doesn't match the name of any menu item in the dictionary, this method should do nothing except raise an error. If an item does not exist, raise invalid sales item error. Else, create a sales for day object using current day and dict argument. Add new sales for day in all sales data attribute. Right? So we are going to have to parse through the dictionary that's being passed in and then compare the items in there to the items within my menu. So how is this structured? Well, the key is the name of the item and the value is the item sold. So I want to grab the keys, which will tell me what items were sold, and then compare those to the item names in my menu. So I'm going to say for items sold in current day sales dot keys, if item sold not in self dot underscore menu, I need to raise invalid sales item error. And here's the first issue we get. This doesn't exist. So at the very top, I'm going to go ahead and create it. Class invalid sales item error. It's going to inherit from exception. And that's all it's going to do for now. We'll keep it very simple. And if it raises this, then it should do nothing else. Right? We're going to do that throughout the entire dictionary. Now, if it goes through the entire dictionary of current day sales and it does not encounter something that doesn't exist in our menu, then it should continue with the code and now create a new sales for today. Right? So we should say today's sales is equal to, and then we have to create the object sales for day, and we get our next issue. Well, I need to create the object, but I don't have access to this object. So at the very top, I'm going to go ahead and import it. And I'm going to say from sales, import sales for day, which now gives me access to the object. And now I can call the object name and create the sales for today, which takes in, as we see here, a day and the sales. Well, what's the day? The day is what's supposed to be here marked in current date. So we'll say self dot current day, and then we're gonna pass in current day sales.
Shouldn't we put that below? I'm saying just because we're you say in the pseudocode you say raise invalid sales item error, but now you're doing something. Okay. Yeah, I think that was just confusing me a little bit at first.
Thank you. Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. So after we create that new sales item, then we need to add it into all sales. Dot append to day sales. And then one thing we didn't cover was increment the current day by 1. So we'll say increment current day by 1. And that's as simple as saying self._ current day plus equals 1. Any questions? Now we can come back and update this to make it a little bit more efficient with a try except block if you want to, but we'll keep it simple for now. But this is essentially what it's saying. Once again, let's take it from the top. We took in the parameter of a dictionary where the keys are names of items sold and the corresponding values. All right, so far so good. Of how many of those items were sold. If an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales of that item on that date. That's probably one thing that we skipped. But we'll put a pause on this. I don't think we have to do anything here. If the name of any item sold doesn't match the name of any menu item with dictionary of menu item objects, this method should do nothing except raise an invalid error. So we did that. We looped through the items. We checked if they weren't inside our menu. And if they weren't, then we raise the invalid sales error. But if they were, then we just continue with our code. There's nothing that has to be done here until we get to line 36. Right? But we don't have to do anything here if an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary. Then there were just no sales for that, and that's okay. We don't need to do anything for it. But after we check that there's no discrepancies in our sales, then we create our sales for day object, because that means that the current day sales that's being passed in as an argument is good to go. There's no issues, and we get the current date of when this was done. And then we append it to all our cells and increment our day by 1. Are there any questions on how I did this?
I don't have a question about that, but could you run to see make this is actually functioning? I'm coding along, and when I tested it, I got an error in the add menu item method.
Yeah, we can say stand1 is equal to LemonadeStand, and I'm going to say Roger stand. And I'm getting an issue here because of the quotes. And then I'm going to, I need to create a menu item or a menu, right? Which I don't have right now. So let me go ahead and import the menu item object. So from menu, import menu item. I'm going to create one menu item and say it's going to be cookies. Or I guess cookie. And what else does it take? The wholesale cost and the selling price. So wholesale cost is going to be $2 or $1, and I'm selling it for $2. Right? I'm going to add a menu item. So we'll say stand1.add menu item, which should be menu item 1. And then I'm going to create sales for day 1 is equal to this dictionary. And we'll comment out lemonade for now. I know we have cookie. So we'll try it out. And then let's run stand1 dot enter sales for today. And it's going to take in sales for day 1. And let's give this a whirl. This is lesson 9. And I'm going to run the LemonadeStand.py. And it worked. We can even say stand1 dot get. Do we have one for get all sales? We don't have one for get all sales. Let's create a small one. Get sales. Return self dot all sales so I can see the sales. And I'm going to print this out. We'll see if it works. And I do have a sales for day object in there. It was created successfully. But now let's go ahead and add this lemonade. And see what that gives me. And I get my invalid sales item error. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, I think I just I was calling a method instead of I was calling a get instead of the actual self dot parameter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions, guys?
Okay, maybe I didn't look into it that much, but do you mind scrolling up just slightly in the lemonade stand? Yeah, sorry, where it says lemonade cookie right above, like the one you commented out right above enter sales for today, the method. No. Right above the method, as far as like how it looked in the README, the day dash zero sales.
Yeah. Is
Any
it
any string, any formatting you need to do for it to look like that, or I guess doesn't really matter.
it's commented out, but this is what it looks like. Right? It's just a regular dictionary. Nothing crazy, nothing fancy out of this. Maybe the format is a little bit off, but it's okay.
Okay,
But
is the day zero part like taking a value, or you're just naming it that?
this is just the naming.
Okay.
Just naming. Right? I called it differently here. Sales for day 1. That's it.
Yeah.
Same
Okay.
thing. It's just defining the variable name for this dictionary. Nothing fancy here. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna take a small pause. Time is 7:54. Let's go ahead or 6:54. Let's go ahead and return at 7:04. Hello, hello.
Do you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I just got back and my mic was off. What's going on,
It's
Jason?
okay. I posted a discrepancy in the chat between when we defined sales as an empty object as opposed to in a method. Um, I just for clarity, I posted the discrepancy if you just want to look at the chat because I was having trouble explaining.
What were you trying to get at?
So class sales for day in the init method, you define sales as an empty object, but then when you talk about under the lemonade stand class, when you define the enter sales for today method, you just do current day sales, but you don't specify it as an empty dictionary.
Yes. So the definition, right? The classification of sales per day. This is we are defining how sales per day should be structured, right? By default, it should have a day, which is an integer type, and a sales, which should be a dictionary. But what we did here is we set a default to an empty dictionary. In the event, whenever someone tries to create a sales per day object, they might not have a dictionary of a record for today, right? They might not have sold any, right? So they might not want to add a dictionary. So we could just set a default to be empty in the event they don't have any record to add, and they're able to create a record of sales per day that's empty to represent, yes, we do have a record for today, but unfortunately for whatever day this is, there's no data for it because we don't
No,
have any information.
no data or no sales. Okay,
Correct.
that was the reason. Okay.
Yeah, this is just setting a default in the event. But although you set a default, this can be overridden, right? If you add a parameter here, what this is saying, this is optional default. In the event, and I'm gonna get an error here because of this, but in the event that there is no, information passed into the second argument, this will default to an empty dictionary, but you can override it, right? So it's here as an optional in the event that you don't have any data pass in, you just pass in the date and it'll create an object anyways, and it'll take this empty dictionary and assign it to the sales data attribute. Make sense, Jason?
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So before we cut off, we finished off the enter sales for today. We're gonna go ahead and continue with today's lesson. Let me go ahead and move on. I'm gonna go ahead and remove these comments here.
Because you're doing everything in a for loop under enter sales per day. You're also appending the sales per day multiple times. Should you use a flag like a Boolean or something to prevent that?
I am not doing it all within the for loop. Notice that the for loop starts here, and the only thing that's going to happen during this for loop running is what's inside the code block.
Oh, sorry.
Indented.
You're right. I misspoke. But it's going to append to the thing no matter what this way, isn't it?
Yes,
which is what we're not supposed to do.
It won't get there if there's an item that's a duplicate, because it's going to raise the error. What do errors do? As you saw here, it stopped my code. Right? I didn't do a try and accept block. I didn't handle this error. I can, and in that event, I would want to do something else. Yes. So there is a way to better do this. But this error, the moment it gets raised because it encounters something in the current day cells that does not belong on my menu, it's going to raise this error and stop my code.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize raising an error stopped the code.
Yeah. And that's one. It kind of goes back to yesterday's conversation. Is that why we want to do exception handling, right? Using try and accept blocks, is because when you have an error like invalid sales item error, or if you get a normal error that's built into Python like value error, right? That'll stop your code. So to prevent that, if you wanted to ensure it doesn't stop Tim, which is actually good practice, you want to do a try and accept block. So we're going to try to do all this, right? And now what we're going to do here is we're going to say accept invalid cells item error, and this should kind of start making your memory kind of start moving from yesterday. We'll say invalid, accept invalid cells item error, and we'll say print this item does not exist in our menu. And now if we run it again, notice that it didn't stop my my code. It continued going on and prints out it does not exist in our menu, but it still didn't add anything. We see here when I try to print cells again, it didn't add the cells within the cells list because it never continued on with the code, because it raised this error, which we then caught and printed out here. So this is actually the correct way of doing this, right? That way it doesn't stop your code. So that's a good point that you want to bring up. This is the correct way of doing it. That way, in the event you do get an error, you don't stop your code. Does that answer your question, Tim?
It does. Thank you for the great explanation.
Yeah, no problem. I was, to be completely honest with you, I was cutting corners here, just kind of go through with it. As you noticed, that it's already 7:11. We've been on this for an hour, so it's very lengthy when I want to make sure that I get very thorough of everything. So, but you are right. This is the correct way of doing it. You want to handle the error so it doesn't stop your code with using something like this with a try and accept block, where the exception captures the error that was raised and you do something according to whatever that error is. Yes, Jason, I see you want to say something?
Um, did you define invalid sales item error as anything, or just throw it the pass in there when you defined it up at top?
I threw in
Okay.
pass.
Okay.
I didn't add anything else, so I'm not printing out no message, nothing. It's just invalid sales item error.
Okay.
You can get a little bit more thorough with that if you like. I encourage you to experiment with it, but for the sake of time, I'm just raising the error and I'm just printing something out. Any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. That takes care of our enter sales for today. We can now go for sales of menu item for day. So still within the class, I'm going to say define sales of menu item for day. And this is going to take as a parameter an integer representing a particular day and the name of a menu item. Right? So takes this parameter an integer representing a particular day and the name. Okay, so I will say day, and this is going to be int. And the other argument is going to be the name of a menu item. Menu item name, and this is going to be a type string. All right, so it's not an object, right? It's the menu item name and for the day. And what this method is supposed to do is return to you how many of that item we sold for a specific day, right? So let's say we've had our stand running for 10 different days. We've been selling cookies for a while. If I want to see how many cookies I sold for day 8, I would run this method, pass in the day and the name of the item I'm trying to check. And it should return to me how many of that item I sold for this specific day. So it returns the number of that item sold on that day. This method will use the given day to find the corresponding sales for the object in the list of all our sales, and then call its getSalesDict method to get the dictionary of sales for that day. It will then look for the item name in the dictionary, taking into account that if an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, there were no sales for that item on that day. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do some pseudocode. Use the day to find the sales for the specific day in all sales. All right, so we get a day. Well, where do we get all the sales for our stand? That's all within the data attribute called all sales, which we see is a list of sales for day objects. So all the sales for a specific day are in an object saved within this list of this attribute. So I'm going to want to go through all these sales, find the specific day I'm looking for, and then work with that one. Right? So I'm going to say for sales in sales dot all sales. This is going to start a for loop because it's a list of sales objects. All right, so I'm going to start a for loop to go through every single object and see which of these objects matches the day that I'm looking for. I'm going to say if day is equal to, and how do I grab the day for this cell? Well, the sales for day object has a method for that called getDay. So I'm going to say if day is equal to sales.getDay, and I'll say sales that as in singular. Sell get day. This is going to check the day for this specific sales and the day that I'm trying to check for to see if they match. And if they do, I want to move forward with it. If not, I should say that it doesn't exist. So I'll do something like that. Else print there is no record of this day. Or I'll do something very specific like a interpolated string where I'll say there is no record of day, and then I'll add the day that I passed in. To make it dynamic, let it know like, hey, this is the day that you're asking for, and there's no record for it. But if there is a record for it, then I should be able to move forward and get the sales for that specific day, right? So it returns the number of items sold on that day. This method will use the given day to find the corresponding sales for the object in the list, which we just did, and then call it a get cells dict method to get the dictionary of cells for that day. So once we find a day, we want to say all or specific day cells is equal to cell.get cells. I think that's what it's called. How do we grab the cells for this day? Okay, here it is. We have a method called get cells dict, which is going to return to us the cells for the specific day. So get cells dict. Right, so all these cells for this specific day, let's say day 8, I'm going to grab them from this object, and I'm going to assign them to this variable here called specific day cells. Right, I now have access to these, and I can check this dictionary. Well, how does a dictionary look like? Well, it looks like this, where the keys are the item names, and the values is how many of that item I sold. So now that I have the dictionary, I want to check the item that I'm passing as an argument to see if it's in the cells. If menu item name in specific day cells dot keys, or actually I could just do this because it's going to default to keys anyways. If it's in here, I want to receive the total cells. I'll say total cells is equal to specific day cells menu item name. That'll grab the key value pair for that item. It's to return to me how many of the items were sold and save it into total cells. If I do not find it in the sales record, that means I didn't sell any cookies for this day, and I should say something that there was nothing there. And we see that here. It will then look for the item name in the dictionary, taking into account that if an item in the menu doesn't appear in the dictionary, then there were no sales of that item on the day. So if it doesn't appear, I should say there is no record of sales for item, and then I'll add the item here, menu item name. Do I have any questions? But what do we do? We use a day to find the cells for the specific day in all cells attribute. So we did that. We looped through them. And then we compared the day we are looking for to the day in our records. If we find it, grab all the cells from the dictionary, which we did. Once we grab all the cells, check if our item we are searching for was sold on this specific day. If it was sold, return total sales, which we haven't done yet. So let's go ahead and return total sales. If the item was not found, return that we did not sell any. And now this else statement here is going to check if the day that we are trying to pass in as an argument, if we even sold anything, or if we even had it. For example, if I try to check the sales for an item on day 15, but I've only had my stand running for 11 days, it doesn't make sense. So we should tell them, let the user know we have not had sales on record for day requested. That's pretty much what all this is doing. Do I have any questions? Everyone understands what happened here, or what are we doing? Okay. This is a pretty longer one than compared to the other one, so I'm a little surprised, but good stuff. We
I
are
think
good to
like for me, if I had tried to do this stuff, I would not get it right. But the way you're doing it and explaining it step by step is like making sense. But it's trying to like recall it if I was to do it myself. That's where I would have to like go back and rewatch this video and do my own self-studying and whatnot.
Yeah. Honestly, it's all about accessing the correct data type, right? Accessing whether it's in a list, in a dictionary, whether you're working with a dictionary or an object, using the correct methods that you have defined, right? If you think about it, that's all we're doing. We're working with different data types, accessing different data types, and then leveraging techniques like for loops, right, to get access to multiple data types. We're doing comparisons, right? We're doing membership checks. These are all basic fundamentals that come from basic coding, right? And it's just bringing it all together to work to solve one specific problem, right? Because that's all it is. Coding is just taking one big problem, breaking it apart to smaller, digestible problems, and then tackling them one step at a time. Very similar to how we do it here. And hopefully, these notes here that I'm adding here explain to you what each line of code is doing. So whenever you go back to the recording, you can see what's happening. But all right, if I have no further questions, I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the next method, which is total sales for menu item. So define total sales for menu item. Now let's look at this. It takes as a parameter the name of a menu item. So we'll say menu item name. And it's just a name, so this is supposed to be a string. It's not an object, it's not an integer, it's a menu item name. Right? So it's supposed to take in a string, like the word cookie, right? And it returns the total number of that item sold over the history of the stand. This method can make use of sales of menu item for date, which is the same function we just talked about earlier. So use menu item name to find all sales of this item. Where are all the sales for my stand at?
In your all sales list.
Yeah, they're in my all sales list right here. This is a list of every single sales for every single day, right? Because for every day, we add a new sales for day object that's supposed to have the day of that sale and the dictionary of the item sold. So all my sales are currently within here. So I need to be able to go through every single one, find out how many cookies I sold for each day, and then return my total, right? So using that, the name of the item I'm looking for, I'm going to go through all my cells, right? So first and foremost, let's go ahead and start a for loop to go through all the cells. So for cell in self dot all cells. This will start the for loop to go through every single sales object I have. And once I get a sales object, I want to see how many of that item I sold on that date. Well, we can utilize this method here, sales of menu item for day. Well, how do we use it? Well, it takes the day of the sale, and it takes the menu item name, right? So we probably want to make something like total sales is equal to 0 to keep track as we loop through all the different days, how many of each item we have sold. We'll create a variable called sales for day, which will be a temporary variable to hold the specific amount of sales of an item that we've encountered throughout a day. And we want to say sales of menu item for day. And this is a method defined within this class, so this has to be self. Self dot sales of menu item for day. The first item it takes is the day. And the second item is the menu item name. Well, how do we grab this? How can we do this? Oh, I'm sorry. I think I'm looking at the wrong one. I think I was looking at total profit for menu item. My apologies. Let's go back to this one. I'm sorry if I made it confuse anybody. We want to take as the parameter the name of menu item. It returns the total number of items sold over the history of the. Okay, now this is good. So we want to use the function that we defined earlier to get the sales for each specific day. How can we do that?
With an index
With an index?
or day?
Yeah. Yeah, an index will represent the day, right? What day did we start our sales in? Do you remember? What was our
Zero.
stand? Yeah, it was started at 0.
So you could take the length of the ledger, I don't remember what you call all sales, and then use it as a range for a loop.
Yeah, absolutely. For sell in range, get the length of all my cells, and I can start going through it. And then this will start a for loop using numbers, right? Because we're doing the range, right? By default, it's going to start to 0. And there's 8 items in my list. Is going to go up to 8. So this should work. I don't have to do any manipulating. And I can pass in the cell. Or maybe I can put for day instead. For day in range of all my cells. So I don't get confused. I can pass in day as an argument. And then I'm going to pass in the menu item name. This will return to me the cells for that day. Right? Because that's exactly what our function is doing. Return total cells. And once I get the item, or the number of total cells, I'm going to say total cells plus equals cells for day. What should we take into account here when using this function of cells of menu item for day?
As if there's like no sales on a specific day.
Yes. Yes. If there's no cells for a specific day. And that's important, right? Because this function is going to run. It's either going to return to me as we define total cells, or it's going to return to me nothing, right? So we can print something and say return 0. So when we use it and we try to save it into this variable and add it to total cells, it'll return to me 0. In the event that we have no record of it, oh, I'm putting this in the wrong way, wrong section. Right? That way I don't get an issue here when I try to add the result of this into my total cells. That'll give me probably a value error because I'm going to try to add a string into an integer, right? Which is not good. So we can say something like try as well to add another fail proof. Try to do this. Except value error, because we know that it could return a string. And we will say print you cannot add a string into total cells. Something like this. So we can add another method to make sure that in case we get an issue here, we're able to figure out where the issue is and handle that value error. Because that's the error that's going to raise here. And I know that just from experience, working with errors, is that when I try to run this method, it's going to return to me either a string, right? Or a 0 or something like this, or it's going to return none. It's going to be a different value. And we might get an issue here where we try to add different data types, which will result in a value error. So I'm going to take that into account and try to capture the event if I get a value error and print out this where it says you cannot add a string into total cells, right? Just to ensure I know how to debug this. But all right, they should run through all the cells and grab the total cells for that. And once it's done with the for loop, it's as simple as returning total cells. Any questions, guys? Okay. Everyone good? I'm assuming we're still.
Yeah, I guess I feel like I'm gonna have to go over this a bunch of times because I don't feel like I could do this on my own quite yet. Like I'm just gonna have to keep going over it, I guess, and hopefully it'll start to click a little more.
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely recommend go over this. This is a very big assignment. I know. It's like bringing everything together to one problem. This is probably the toughest assignment we've had. I did give you guys enough time though. You can't say I didn't. You guys got like an hour, then another half hour, and then also the time between now and yesterday. I try to give you guys enough time, but not too much. We're going to fall behind schedule. But
Yeah, no issue with the time. Just yeah, it's very difficult.
yeah, no, absolutely. I completely understand that, and you guys are the first. It does not fail that every single time. And I'm probably gonna hear this complaint from you guys. The complaint is, I just feel like everything before LemonadeStand.py was super easy, and then we went from 0 to 100. Which in reality, we actually did not. Right? Nothing here is different. Everything we've learned importing modules, exception handling, right? We talked about that yesterday. Try and accept blocks, right? Accessing, doing for loops, range methods, declaring variables, plus equals, using methods. All these are all basic stuff. So in reality, it's not that I went from 0 to 100. We're just kind of bringing it all together. And this is probably the first time that you see it where like you're bringing every single concept that you have learned about Python or JavaScript or anything coding in general all together to see how it will work in a full program. And that's what probably the most overwhelming part of it. But if you do feel somewhat confident on this or okay, then that should be a green flag for you to know that you are on the right track. And if you don't, it shouldn't be discouraging either, because I understand this is a difficult problem. And it's good to see now. I want you to think of this, that the object-oriented programming assessment is significantly harder than this. Right? It is significantly harder than this. Now imagine if you were doing something harder than this the first time and you're being graded after the weekend. Right? That's why foundation programming is so important and why your time here right now is going to pay off. Right? So you go through these issues and you see it now instead of seeing it the day of the assessment. All right, so if that doesn't make you feel better, I don't know what else will. So although you might feel like you're struggling right now, understand that it's better to see it now than seeing it later. But this is kind of how it's going to look like, something very similar to this, where it's just a bunch of different methods of doing different things, working with different other classes and data types. But let's go ahead and move forward and not waste any more time. The next one's going to be total profit for menu item. All right, so we're going to define total profit for menu item. It's going to take as a parameter the name of a menu item. So once again, menu item name string. And it returns the total profit on that item over the history of the stand. So we got the total sales earlier, but now we're going to get the total profit, right?
the total profit. How do we define the profit? Well, there's a data attribute that we gave our menu items when we declared it, and that was wholesale cost and selling price. So after we get the sales for a specific item, we need to also get how much we paid for it, how much we sold for it, and what profit we made from it. Right? So we take that menu item name and we return the total profit on that item over the history of the stand. So the profit for any item sold is the selling price of the menu item minus the wholesale cost of the item. This method can make use of total sales for menu item, which is the method that we just defined. So we can say total sales of item is equal to, and then we're going to call this method we just called or defined, total sales for menu item. And we're going to pass in the name of the menu item in here. And this is going to tell me how much of that item I sold throughout the history of my stand. And now I need to get the wholesale, get the selling price, and return profit. Okay. How do I get the price for wholesale and selling from this item just utilizing this menu item name? Because this method we just defined is going to return to me how many of the item I sold, right? That's what this method did, right? But now that I have the amount of how much I sold it for every single day, or how many I sold each day, I need to figure out how much of a profit I made from all my sales of this, right? How do I grab the wholesale and the selling price of a specific menu item? It's not a true question.
Wouldn't you use the menu item name and then use the menu item cost method, like the item or the item wholesale cost method and the item selling price method?
Sure, right? The menu item keyword object does have these methods, which is get wholesale cost and get selling price. What data type am I using right now in this method? Is this an object or a string? Right. So right now I don't have the object. I only have the string. How can I grab this object? So I can grab how much it costs. Once again, not a trick method, not a trick question. It's somewhere in my code. Where did I save this menu item?
Yeah,
Where can I find it?
Get menu.
There we go. Well, that's the method for it. But we do have a data attribute called menu. And what is this menu? What is this menu? Right? It's a dictionary where the key is the item name and the value is the object itself. So I know that there is somewhere where my object is stored. I just need to know how to grab it. So I need to grab my menu, right? And then once I grab my menu, I want to grab the item I'm looking for so I can access the object. And from there, I have the object, right? So I need to make sure I'm working with the right data type. And to grab the right data type, I need to go into my menu and find the object. So I'll say something like, menu item object is equal to, let's go ahead and call the menu, right? I'm within the definition of this function, so I can do it within here. I can just say self. And I want to grab the menu item name, right? Which is going to return to me an object, as we saw from the way that this dictionary is structured, right? The key is the item name, which is the string, and the value is the object itself. This returns to me the object. And now that I have the object, I can utilize the methods that belong to this object. So I can say menu, or I can just say wholesale cost, wholesale cost is equal to menu item object dot get wholesale cost. Right, which I believe is a method. Yep. I want to grab the selling price. So selling price is equal to menu item object dot get selling price. And to determine the profit, we have to subtract the wholesale cost from selling price. So I'll say total profit per item sold is equal to, or we say total profit for single item is equal to the selling price minus the wholesale cost. And they say total profit is equal to, and then multiply how much I earned for a single item by how many items I have sold, which is right here. Finally, I return total profit. Do I have any questions on how I completed a total profit for menu item? You might be wondering, Roger, why aren't you just testing these out? I have a whole test file that I can do once I'm done. And we'll do that to test it. Right? We leverage the total sales for menu item to grab how many of the items we sold. We then grab the object itself from our menu. We use the object methods to grab how much of its wholesale cost it is, its selling price, and then we did some simple math, right? We figured out how much we earned per item, and we multiplied that profit per item by the amount of times that we have sold it to get the total profit and then return total profit. Any questions before we move on to the final method? All right, let's go ahead and define total profit for Stan. It takes no parameters, so all it needs itself, and returns the total profit on all items sold over the history of the stand. This method can make use of total profit per menu item. Okay, total profit for the stand in total. That's all items I sold for all days throughout the entire history of my stand. Someone kind of talk me through what we might want to do. Some pseudocode. You don't have to talk code. Just tell me the logic behind it. What should we probably be doing?
Well, wouldn't you want like a dictionary of how much you've earned from each item, like the item name, and then the value is how much you've sold over the whole time the stand's been open, and then just add all those together?
It doesn't necessarily have to be in a dictionary. We do have ways to figure out how much of that item we sold, right? So you're on the right track. We have a method for that, right? We just defined it. Total profit for menu item. Right. So leveraging all the code we've written up to this point and knowing our data structure and data attributes, how can we do this? Talk to me, not code-wise, but logic-wise if you have your own business.
Loop over your all sales. Or I'm sorry, loop over your menu to get all your object, your string names, and then feed each one into total profit for menu item and add it to a running total.
Perfect. Exactly that. I want to go through my entire menu so I can grab every single menu item using the name of every item. Use total profit for menu item, right? So as I grab every single menu item, I have other functions that can handle a lot of this work. I can grab the total profit for every single menu item with the code I've ever written. right? And then maybe have a running total adding up the profit for each item. And then finally, return total profit. Right? Not even talking code. I probably want to I want to know all the items that I can sell, know how much I sold for each one, and then just add them up, right? And then taking that logic, how do we do it in code? Well, if I know that I need to grab every single item on my menu, then I need to access my menu data attribute, which is right here. This here has every single item in my menu, where the key is the item name, right? And why do I just need the name? Well, because I've already done other functions that only take the item name and return to me the total profit for that item, right? We want to use the dry method. You don't want to repeat yourself. Do not repeat yourself. There's no reason to have to go through the same logic of looping through every single object once again and calculating how much I earn per object and then adding it all up. If I already have methods that do all that for a single item, I can just grab every single item in my menu and then pass it through this same function, right? So I'm going to say for menu item in self._menu, and I can specify as well .keys. This will only give me the keys, which is, as we know, the key is the item name in the string. I'm going to say total, or I'll say profit for item is equal to, and then I'm going to leverage this method right above, where I'm going to say self.total profit for menu item. I'm going to pass in the menu item, which will give me the profit for that item. And then I have to have a running total. So I'll create total profit is equal to 0. As I grab the profit for each single item, I'm going to go ahead and update what my total profit is with the profit for item. And once this goes through the entirety of my menu, then I'm good. I've added every single profit I made for each item of my entire menu. Then I can just return total profit. Simple as that. Do I have any questions on how we reach this outcome? Good try, Chase. Good try. Thank you for trying. That's all I asked for. Any questions? Any confusion that you want me to solve?
I think it all makes sense. It's just like you said earlier, like putting it all together from what we've done is a bit overwhelming, and keeping track of all the different variable names, I think is like overwhelming a little bit for me. But it makes sense going step by step the way you did it with the pseudocoding and whatnot.
Okay. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah, I still think there's a difference between like, being given a solution, kind of understanding it. There's still a lot of work outside of class, working through it almost like repeatedly, so everything clicks, because I feel like, we give a problem and then just give a solution, do that all day, but that doesn't mean you can do it, necessarily.
That is what we call Jason. That's what we call tutorial hell. Have you guys heard that concept before? Tutorial hell, and some of you might have gone through it. But tutorial hell is very common when people that try to learn something new, specifically stuff like code. It's very popular with coding, or game development is a big one. Is you will, for example, and this is, I've gone through it, right? And you probably went through it too before coming to Platoon, is that you try learning on your own. You probably tried already to start a project by yourself. And you've gone through a 3 to 4 hour tutorial on YouTube by some dude who does nothing but coding. I tried making a game my own before I started coding. You would follow a tutorial to the T. By the end of it, you have this cool, nice game or this cool application. And then you try to recreate it and you realize that you learn absolutely nothing. Right? and then you're in this infinite loop of going through constant tutorials and hoping that maybe after the next tutorial you'll understand it better. And you might understand a concept or two, but you cannot replicate the same thing that the person showed you in the tutorial because you did not learn it. Right? That is what we call tutorial hell, and you're absolutely right. You guys need to go through the struggle, right? And this is why I tell you guys, no one's gonna teach you coding for yourself. You have to go through the times of you messing up your code, find out why it's not working. But breaking your head open, why is it not working? Spending hours debugging, sleeping it off, coming back, realizing your mistake, fixing it, learning on your own. Like no one's gonna teach you that. I can sit here and teach you the right way, but unless you code it out yourself, you're not going to understand. And you are absolutely right. So, which is why I gave you guys the time to do it. I'm teaching you the way how it's supposed to be done. Take this recording, go back and try to work it. And if you are spending more than 20, 30 minutes on one thing, go back, reference the video, and understand the concept. Come back and try to do it without looking at some video or whatever. See if you can replicate it. All right. So, finally, we have some final instructions here where how we're supposed to run this file. The LemonadeStand file must include a main function. I'm not going to do that. I'll show you how we'll do it. That runs if a file is run as a script, but not if it's imported to another file. I did it differently than initially instructed because just my LemonadeStand is a lot, right? Cells doesn't have much. Many doesn't have much. But if I have to keep going up and down every time I need to reference cells or menu, it would be annoying as hell, right? So just my LemonadeStand itself, this is how long it is. Look at it. This is 118 lines, and that's absurd. So how do we get around that? Well, we have our menu py, our self.py, and our LemonadeStand.py. Let's go ahead and create a new file. This is going to be called main.py. And in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my different classes. I guess I didn't have to make a menu item. Okay, it's fine. In here, I'm going to say from LemonadeStand imports LemonadeStand from cells import cells for day, and from menu imports menu item. And then in this, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the examples. That way, I have the results of it all. And let me kind of do some formatting here. There's some formatting issues. That's okay. I don't want to recreate everything from the bottom up. There we go. And let's run this to see if I get any issues when I run the example of how it should work. And then I'm going to run the test in a bit. So I'm going to run Python main.py. I didn't get any issues. Let's look at it. We created the LemonadeStand. I created a menu item. No issues there. I didn't get no error. I added the menu item. And what we can probably do is maybe add some comments here when we add something like print out item successfully added. We could do that. Where's add menu item? We can say print item successfully added into our menu. And this is just for testing purposes, so I can see what's happening here. Okay, yeah, so there we go. I successfully added that. My add menu item worked. I added 3 different items. I created day 0 cells, which is lemonade and item. I'm sorry, cookies. Let's also grab the total profit for Stan. See what that does for me. 6.6. And it says that there's no record of sales for item Nori, which is correct. I didn't have it on my day 0 sales. I only have 1 sales. All right, we can recreate a couple more days if you like. We say day 1 sale, day 2 sales, change the numbers, add some variety in here. Right? And then one of these will have Nori. And let's go ahead and replicate the entering the cells for day 1 and day 2.
You forgot the I on Nori.
Nori, thank you. There we go. All right, so it's kind of working. There's no record of day 1, day 2, day 3. That's probably somewhere. Let's stir this up so I can see. A couple things happen here. I added a menu item, which is good. I created a 0, day 1, day 2. And I got some messages here. Clear. What are you printing out? There's no record of day 1, day 2, day 3. That's probably going to be in my LemonadeStand.py. Somewhere I am printing out. Probably because my code. Whenever I'm adding things, sells a menu item for day. Do I need to add that too? There is no record of items sold for day. Sells a menu item for day. Does someone see something I don't see? Where am I getting this? All right, so here's my lemonade profit. I entered the record before, which is good. But then when I go to total profit for Stan, it runs all this. Right? Total profit for Stan. Okay, because my total profit for Stan is running the total profit for menu item every single time. And not every item was sold. And this print statement is kind of getting in the way. So let's go ahead and get rid of it. Where we check the sales of a menu item per day. Where I don't really need to do anything here. I should probably get rid of it. Let's get rid of this print statement. There's no record of day 1. Now I'm getting, there's no record of day and this happening. This is getting confusing because of all my print statements. I do apologize. I try to make it easy to visualize. Let me just go ahead and run the test file instead. Let's put a pause on this because I got a lot of print statements and I feel like that's really conflicting. Instead of relying on these examples, let's just go ahead and run the test to make sure there's no issue on the actual functionality. The print statements are kind of throwing me off right now. I apologize for that. Let's go ahead and run the test file to see that everything's working. And we're going to do some configuration in the test file. And the reason for that is because originally everything should be within one file, and I changed that. So we need to ensure that we import from the specific file. So from LemonadeStand imports LemonadeStand and invalid sales item error. So make sure you fix imports. All right, because this is no longer valid. Because I did a little bit different than how the README said. And now I'm gonna go ahead and run the LemonadeStand test.py and let's see what issues I have. I ran 5 tests and I failed 2. Clear. And these print statements are honestly going to be the death of me. But let's look at the errors. I have an issue here where I have invalid sales item error. Test if the invalid sales item error is raised if an item sold is not in the menu list. So this is giving me an issue. It's saying that the invalid sales item error is not being raised. So there's an issue with how I established that item error. Let's go back to it. Invalid sales item error. Test if the invalid sales item error is raised if an item sold is not in the menu list. Which technically we did for items sold in current date sales if item sold not in sale menu. Then we raised invalid sales error, but it's not liking the way we raised it. Well, let's look at the test. Right, what test is this? This is test invalid sales error. Let's go to that. Test invalid sales error. All right, so let's look at the test. This test created LemonadeStand. It created 3 menu items. It added the menu items. And then it created a sales record for a specific date. Notice that they have cake in here, but not fudge and limits. And then they raise invalid sales item error. Stand enter sales for today. So what's happening is this error is not successfully being raised. It is checking invalid sales item error. Did I define it differently? Invalid sales item error. No, it looks correct. But it's not catching it. And I don't know if it's because it's in a test block or what. It's probably because it's in the test block. Let's try to get it out of a test block or a try and accept block and see how this works. And yeah, that's what it was. Okay, So notice that I'm no longer failing that test. Well, what did you do, Roger? Well, what happens here, this assertion here is going to check if an invalid or or something was raised, right? In short, it's checking if something was raised. And you can hover over it and it tells you fails unless an exception of class expected exception is raised by the callable when invoked. It's supposed to be raised whenever they run the enter cells for today. But it was failing this test because my method was not raising it. Right? I was handling the exception. I mean, technically I was raising it, but the way the test was structured, it wanted me to stop my code. It wanted me to stop and actually have the issue of this invalid cells item error. It wasn't expecting me to handle it with a try and except block. Right? So it wasn't testing for me of how I handle it. It was testing that it did raise this error and it stopped my code. Which unfortunately, the way they have my code, I didn't have it coded like that. I was handling the exception, but it wasn't testing for them. So that's how we took care of this. Right? It tests if the invalid sales item error is raised if an item sold is not in the menu list, which technically it is, but we weren't letting our interpreter catch it. We were catching it ourselves. Which technically, I mean, it's good for us. That means that, we were doing the correct thing, but here it wanted to make sure that there was actually some kind of error that was defined, right? So it was testing for something else. Did we actually define this error, and is it working? Which technically it is. Maybe a better way of later on, this is going to be on me, is changing this test to ensure that, sure, this is raised, but is it also telling you the correct message? And you can test if the exception being raised is being handled correctly by testing the response that you have in your except block. Now let's look at the next one that I failed. I failed test sales of menu item for day. Test sales of menu item for day that doesn't exist. Okay. So this is a very simple one. It's going to test if the correct message is returned to the user if they query the sales for a day that does not exist. Right? So it's testing the message of what it's supposed to be getting. Notice here that the assertion itself is going to take what it's ever in total profit. Well, what's being added to total profit? The response of this function here, sales of menu item for day, is going to test whatever comes back from this method, which is here, against this text here said no information found for that day, which I don't recall actually coding in. Well, let's look at this. Sales of menu item for day. Where is that at? Sales of menu item for day. What happens if I don't get it? Well, I am not returning anything. Right? I'm printing something out, but it wants me to return no information found for that day. This is what it's testing for. Right? That whatever's coming back from this function is matching this, right? It's testing if whatever returns from the function itself is equal to no information found for that day. And as of right now, we're not doing that. We're returning 0 and returning, we weren't returning anything on the other one. But let's see if it works now. We might have to edit this one. Yes, that seems to be the issue. Return no information where's it at? Actually, I think we're on the right track, but it failed something else. I think test sells a menu item for a day that doesn't exist. Total profit is returning none when it shouldn't be none. Let's look at this code. I loop through all my cells and I check if the day is equal to whatever cell I'm looping through. If so, I grab the dictionary. I check if the item is in there, and then I add the total cells. Then I return cells. But if I don't find it, I have to say that no information was found for that date. Right? So return no information found for that date. But I'm gonna get an issue here. Right? It gave me error, not a failure, an error. Right? I get errors somewhere else. Why do you think that is? Well, because somewhere, whenever I'm using this function here, it's still trying to add what's being returned from here, which is not right. Right? Let's look at the first one. I'm getting an issue in test total profit for Pop-Tart. Test total sales for Pop-Tart. Where's it at? Here we go. It's saying that somewhere here, it does not support the operating of integer and string, which, if you recall, I talked about this, right? Where if I return a string, I was going to get some kind of value error because of how this is working, right? So it's trying to run the function of total sales for a menu item, and it's passing in Pop-Tart. And it's getting an error. It's not failing. It's getting an error because the total profit for a menu item is trying to add something. Total profit for menu item is equal to, but where do I use total sales? Total sales for item. I'm trying to do something here where I'm probably doing something with a string and integer. And I need to fix that. I need to fix this method, total sales for menu item. Because that's what's failing. Right? Because if you see here in the test, I'm trying to add total sales plus equals sales for day. Right? Total sales plus equals sales for day, and it's failing. And line 73 of LemonadeStand.py. Line 73 of LemonadeStand.py. Here we go. When I use this and I try to add it to total sales, I'm adding an integer and a string. So this is failing, unfortunate. What we probably want to do is handle what's happening here. Maybe this isn't catching it. Let's do it again. There we go. For some reason, it wasn't catching this value error. Right, here we go. When I run it, the total profit for Pop-Tart, I was trying to add whatever this string was into total sales, which is supposed to give me an error. But I don't think it's value error. It was giving me a different error. What error is this? Oh, it's a type error. My apologies. It's a type error. I was using the wrong error type error. And there we go. It no longer has that error. Now I'm just failing the test itself. Let's look at it. Notice that it is now getting something, but there's something very off. Right? The result that I'm getting from that does not equal the correct answer of what Pop-Tart should be. So there's something wrong with this. And it's probably because something's being returned here and not added as it should be. Sales for menu item. I'm getting the wrong answer here. It should be 2088, but I'm getting something else. So we probably have to refactor this. Anybody has any ideas? He sells a menu item per day. It's returning the wrong cells. And I honestly, I think it's this right here. I think it's this, right? So we have all the sales records. We're going to loop through every single cell, which is cell objects, right? We check the day to match the specific day we're looking for, right? Let's say it's day 8. We found day 8. Once we're in day 8, we grabbed all the cells for that day, and we check if the menu item is in a specific day sales. And if it does, we grab the total cells and then return that. If it's not in there, we're returning 0. Right? And that might be an issue here. We might not need this. Let's see if this fixes it. Which, yeah, it probably won't. Okay, this might be working, but maybe wherever this is being called is not using it as it should. Let's look at this test again. Test total profit for Pop-Tart. It grabs all the cells. Menu item, menu item. We're adding the menu items. We have cells for day 0 and day 1. We enter the cells and we check the total profit for menu item of Pop-Tarts. Right? An entirety of the stand. But we are returning a weird decimal. This function, unfortunately, is returning 2.32. Total profit for menu item is returning 2.32. And that does not look accurate. Total profit for menu item of Pop-Tart. Total profit for menu item. This right here is not working right. This is giving me the wrong answer. Right? Because it's saying that at the end of it, once it takes the profit or everything else, it's going to return to me 2.32 of whatever Pop-Tart is. But if you look at Pop-Tart, I sell 2 Pop-Tarts here. I sell 16 Pop-Tarts here, which is 18. I buy the Pop-Tart for 43 cents, but I sell them for 159. That's over $1. This should easily be over 18. Easily. But I'm not getting 18. I'm getting 2.32. Does everyone understand so far? That means this total profit for menu item function is not getting me the total profit as I intended. What am I doing wrong in my math, guys?
So it seems like it's only adding the first day, like day 0 and not day 1. Is what I thought it was saying, because it was like basically a dollar, maybe a little bit more per Pop-Tart profit. And then you're getting like, what did it say, $2.32 back. I'm sure if we add that up, it'll work. And then it's not adding day 1, the extra 16 Pop-Tarts.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the total sales for a menu item is not grabbing every single day. You are absolutely right. This right here is not grabbing every single day. So let's look at it. How can we get this to work? We have total sales set to 0. This is our tracker. We are looping through all the cells. Chase, try to mute me, please. Thank you. I can hear myself in the background. That's okay. That's okay. For some reason, we're not effectively grabbing every single cell in our record. Why is that? Let's try to print day.
Is
What's
it because
up?
range
Uh-huh.
range is up to but not including? Like if you have a range 0 to 5, it actually goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, we
No,
have two.
that should work with a list.
This should work, right? Because the list should have 2 items, right? Because there's day 0, day 1. So by using length, this is going to return 2 items, right? So 2. The length of this list is 2. Range starts at 0 and goes up to, but not including the item you're adding. So it should be 0 and 1, index 0 and 1. So technically, it should grab them, no issues. All right. So this should start at 0 and then it goes to 1. When it gets to 0, it's going to grab the cells for day of that item, and then it adds the total cells. Unless there's an issue. But if I do get a type error, it won't add anything, right? Because I will only get some kind of string if the item did not exist, correct? So this should run smoothly. It goes to the next one. Get day, menu item name, total sales plus equals sales for day, and they return total sales. Or do you think it goes deep into that? Do you think the issue lies here? But it wouldn't make sense, because if it gets to the first item, why is it not grabbing the other items? You know?
Is it the placement of the try except block, maybe? Like maybe try except should be outside of the loop. And that's what's causing it to only grab the first value.
Not quite sure. I don't think it's that. Let's try to get rid of this. Actually, let's not completely delete it. Let's go ahead and let's get rid of try and accept block. We might get an issue here. Yep, we got the error, unsupported data types, because of this returning a string. Right, sales of menu item for day. It's gonna return either total sales or return no information found for that day. So we need that. We need this type error. Right? So I know if I can add it to total sales. We can say maybe if sales for day is equal or type sales per day is equal to int, then we add it, right? If not, then we don't add anything. We can try that. I no longer get the issue anyways, but still, I'm still getting 2.32. There's something wrong here with the sales for a Pop-Tart. It's only taking day 2 of these for day 1, right? Let's do the math real quick, just to verify that it's only getting up to the first day. If a Pop-Tart is 40 cents and we sell it for 159, I should do 159 minus 43. That's 41 cents. 41 times 2. No, I don't think it's doing that either. That's wrong, Chase. Actually, is it 1.59 minus 0.43? No, it's right. It's only taking day 0. I got 2.32, which matches this. So that's correct. It's only taking into account the first day. Total profit for menu item is not grabbing all the other days. And that's an issue. Right? We're looping through in the range of, but something's happening here where it's only grabbing the first day and adding that, and then it's not doing the rest.
Is it possibly that the other days aren't being added correctly to all sales? Which I don't think that would make sense because it added day 0 fine. So I don't know why it would stop after that, but that was my other thought. I don't think it's necessarily true, but
Print all cells. There's 2 items in the cells. When it runs this, it does print out cells effectively. Just to verify, this is the test. So you sure which one is the print statement? I got a lot of print statements here, unfortunately. Yeah, this is a test, right? So I print out cells. There's 2 items in this sales record, which is correct. We then say for day in range of all cells, but we're using the length. And maybe it's gonna be better if we just change this. I think we'll do some refactoring here, guys. We're gonna say for day, or we'll say something like for cell in self dot all cells, which will give me the object. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab the day for each cell by using get day. I think that's gonna be easier. Specific day is equal to cell dot get day. I think we're gonna do this just to ensure we have no issues. Once I get the specific day, I'm gonna pass in specific day into here, right? And that should grab me the cells for that day and add it to total sales. Let's see if this fixes it. And it hates me. It did not fix it. No, not at all. I think if it's not this, guys, then that's telling me there might be an issue here. Right? Because I feel like we're grabbing every single one correctly. As a matter of fact, we can go ahead and print sales for day and see what it tells us. 20, no information for that day. This will return 20 for day 0. Which is not necessarily correct. I can test this out on other ones. We have so many print statements. But regardless, it's still failing 2.32 with the Pop-Tart. Okay. Why are they being so weird? Total profit for Pop-Tart. Day 0. Day 1. Assert almost equal. Does anybody see something I do not see? I feel like I'm missing something. Anybody at all?
I mean, I think the only thing I see is that what Tim said, that the range doesn't print the last iteration. So I don't know if that is the actual thing causing the issue, but that's what Google says. I don't know.
Yeah, we are no longer
already fixed that.
using. Yeah, we're no longer using range. I'm looping through the individual item in my cells. Total sales for menu item.
It's got to be something the way you're doing math with the floats, like the multiplication you're getting for the number of sales times the actual cost or the sale price is giving a weird decimal place and screwing with the total.
Yeah, I think you're right. For sale and sell dollar sales. Specific day. Let's look at sales and menu item. Day. I get that. Total profit per menu item. Okay. Let's go ahead and take it one step at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and clear this out. Let's go to our LemonadeStand.py. And I'm going to test out what is going on with our code by testing the methods individually. So we have stand 1 is equal to eliminate stand. And I'll just say Roger stand. All right. I'm gonna make menu 1 or menu item 1. We'll make this a lemonade. It's supposed to be a float. So I'll say it's gonna be 1.0, and I'm selling it for 2.0. Make it even numbers to make it easier. Menu item 2 is equal to menu item. We'll say cookie. This will also be 2, and I'll set it for 4. Okay. Now, how do I add these? I want to make Where's the add menu item? Okay. Yeah, we're gonna say S1.add menu item. I'm gonna add menu item 1. And I'm gonna add menu item 2. Now, before we move any forward, I'm gonna go ahead and print this out. Python LemonadeStand.py. And it's working good so far. Okay, so I got that going. Let's look at the next method we have. We have enter cells for today. I'm gonna go ahead and say day 0 is equal to lemonade, and it's gonna be 5. And then cookie, and it's gonna be 10. S1.enter cells for today. I'm gonna pass in day 0. And that should be all it takes. Let's look at it. Enter cells for today. Yeah, current sales date. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, it's not doing anything printing out wise, but I'm gonna add something at the very end. Print cells for date successfully added. Simple as that. Okay. We'll add day 1, day 2. This will be 10, will be 15. This will be 4, and this will be 8. We'll copy and paste these days. And day 2. Okay, we got 3 cells. All right, next method. Enters for date. Sells the menu item for date. Well, let's check out 1. I'm gonna say S1 sales for a menu item for day. It's gonna take what day? I want to look for day 1 and eliminate, which should match. As of right now, it doesn't print anything out. Let's make sure it does so I can see what it's doing. Sales of menu item for day. It should return sales, so I should just print, honestly. I'll do print. Print. No information found for that date, which is wrong. That is wrong. I try to print out the sales for lemonade on day 1, which should be 10, and it returns no information found for that date. And that's where our first issue is at. On the sales of menu item for day. So we take in the day and the menu item. We loop through all our cells, right? It's a dictionary, right? This dictionary should be a list of sales for day objects. So for cell and all cells, if day, which is what I'm passing in, which is going to be day 1, is equal to cell.getDay. And let's go ahead and just, for print statements, let's go ahead and print out day. And I'm not even getting that out. And that's an issue. Right? That get day method is not working. What the heck is cell? Let's print out cell. It's not even going in there. Cell is an object. What about get day? It's days. I get day 0 for the first day, and I don't get anything for the second day, which is wrong.
Is day 1 one of the ones that's got an error that the thing doesn't exist?
What do you mean?
Like, are you trying to pass on day 1 an item that's not in the... No? Never mind.
Day 1, eliminate. Right? But when I run this sales of menu item for day, it's going to have to loop through all my items in my sales record. Right? And I entered sales for today, which is correct, right? It manipulated my all sales by appending the total sales for that day, and it increases by 1. But that's not working. As a matter of fact, let me print out S1 dot current date. I might accident. I don't have current date. Gosh dang it. Let me see. Get sales, get date. Let me go with define, get current day. So return self dot score current date. There's an issue here right now, and I'm trying to figure it out. Print S1 dot get current day. Let's see what day it's supposed to be. Yeah, we're on day 3, so that's correct. We added 3 different ones. It should be on day 3. I'm checking sales of menu item for day. I'm passing in day 1, which is an integer, and the string of eliminate. Sales of menu item for day. It takes the day, integer, and the menu item, right, which is eliminate. I loop through all my cells. And as I loop through here, I need to be printing out the day for each cell. But notice that when I run this method, it does not do that. For some reason, this get day is returning 0 for the first one. And then it goes into my if day is equal to get day, and somewhere here it's failing. For the first one, it should have returned the totals. I'm assuming it's going to return 0. Is that for return for day 0? Now, the first one needs to return 5. Right? It needs to return 5. If it's that one. But it's not. Right? It's going to look for the day. For sale instead of the all days, we print the first one. It won't equal the first one, so I'll get 0. We'll get in here. It doesn't pass because it's not day 0. It should go to the next for loop. But it doesn't. Do you guys understand what I'm getting at? We get day 0 object. I print out the date. Print 0 out. It starts at if check. If day, which is 0, right, for this specific cell, is equal to the day that I'm passing in, which it won't, right? Because the day I passed in was 1. This should fail the first time it goes through this for loop. So it should not go in here. It should restart. Oh, I see what happened here. This else statement. The first time it does not find that, it returns. There we go. That else statement was in the wrong tab. Oh my God. Right? It was out here. So when it first starts this for loop, it's going to start at day 0. Right? And we're checking for day 1. So it's going to say, hey, does day 1 equal to day 0 of this current cell? No, it doesn't. It's supposed to start the for loop to go to the next one. But what happens? It goes down to the else statement, which I'm doing return and no information for that date. So it will stop it. Oh, Lord. Anyways, so yeah, it goes to day 0, does not match the one that I'm passing in. It goes to the next for loop. It prints out day 1. Day 1 is the one that I'm passing in here. So it passes and it goes in here. It grabs the cell dict. It checks if the item that I'm passing in here is in the cells. If so, we'll grab the total cells for it and returns it. And yeah, that's it. But why are we returning 3? Oh, get current day. Okay, yeah. Okay, now let's go ahead. Let's remove this print statement and watch it work. I want to grab the sales for lemonade on day 1, which is 10, which is good. Let's do day 0. This should be 5. Correct. And we do day 2, it should be 4. We'll even switch this up. We'll say cookie, which is 8. All right, now it's working. So that was working good. Enter sales for today. Now let's see for sales of menu item for day. That was good. All right, next one is total sales for menu item, which takes in a menu item name. So we'll say print S1, total sales for menu item. We'll pass it lemonade, which this should return 4 plus 10 is 14, plus 5 is 19, which is correct. If returning some extra mumbo jumbo, that's okay. We have lemonade, and we do cookie. 33, which is correct. 15 plus 10 is 25, plus 8 is 33. Correct. All right, so that's working. Now I wonder, can I run my test.py? And now we're only getting one issue, which is no information found for that date. Okay. That fixed it, guys. That else statement being in the wrong indentation wasted us 40 minutes. That is crazy. Oh, Lord. It was literally the indentation. That was all that was going wrong. Let's look at the last test, which is test sales of a menu item for day that doesn't exist. Oh, that upset me. This is checking for chips, which doesn't exist, but it's supposed to return no information found for that day, but I'm returning total profit, sales of menu item. Is now returning none. So we're checking a specific day, which is good. But when we check if the menu item is in a specific sales, we need to return why is it returning none? No information found for that date. We should say else. What should we do? Total profit. I'm returning none. Where am I returning none? Total profit from where in test sales of menu item for a day that does not exist. When in chips, it'll find the day, but it won't find chips. A menu item in specific day sales. It won't find it. Does anybody see something I don't see? It takes chips. It checks the specific day sales. Dictionary. To see if it's in there. But it's returning none. It only adds day 0 but we're checking for day 1. And that's probably what the issue is. No, it's not gonna like that.
Can you return none with a message?
It's comparing nothing. So there's a point here where nothing is being returned. Right. So notice here they have sales of menu item for day. So they're trying to check the sales for something. They're trying to check for chips on day 1. Right. But I only have one sales record, which is day 0. Right. So they added an invalid day that you won't be able to find within my record. Right. So we loop through for the cells and we're checking if day is equal to cell.getDay, which will be 1, but we shouldn't have 1 in here. Right? So we can say elif day is not equal to cell.getDay. Return no information found. There's some kind of structure issue here that we gotta fix. No, it's not gonna like that. Before, did this say none? That whatever's coming back from this function, cells of menu item for day is equal to none. Something here is not returning which should be returning. So if we're grabbing the total cells and returning total cells somewhere, which technically it shouldn't really come in here because the day being passed in is 1. But when we grab the days from all cells, we shouldn't have day 1. We should only have day 0. Right? We only enter cells for 1 day here. Enter cells for today. Right? So it should only be day 0. They're passing in 1 here. So when it runs this function, day is going to equal to 1. And then I have the dictionary here that has chips. I loop through my list of cell objects. And I'm checking if the day they passed in, which is 1, is equal to the day of my sales record. But it should not be because my sales record day is going to be at 0. Right? Because I only have 1 entry. So this should not pass. And if it doesn't pass, then that means that the day they added was invalid and they should return no information found for that day. Right? They should say else return no information found for that day. Right? But I think this has to come out here. There we go. That's what it was. Because we might have multiple cells, so not all of these are going to pass this check. Right? Not all of these are going to pass this check. I might have 5 different cell records. I'm looking for a cell record, maybe 3. I'm not always going to pass this check So if this doesn't pass, I'm not gonna immediately return something. I have to finish going through everything. Once I go through everything, if none of these pass, then I return no information found that day. But what I was doing when putting it here, I was returning it prematurely. By returning it prematurely, the moment that I got to a day that did not match the day passed into my parameter, it was returning no information found that day, which was an issue, right? Because it could have been later down in my list, and that was causing me issue. No one else saw this. It took me this long. Oh Lord.
So can we just get rid of that redundant else return statement? That the else return no information done for that day. I mean, that's inside the double ifs.
Nope.
Okay.
Right? Because it's going to encounter, we still need this, because it might actually find a day, right? It will find a day. But it does not necessarily mean that the item that we're looking for was sold that day. So we still need this in here. Make sense? This one here will return in the event we loop through every single sales record and we did not find any record for the data they're asking from us. Right? We should put no information for that date. If we remove this, what happens when we do find the data that we're looking for, but the item is not sold that day? So we need something else. Right? It needs to be added here. At some point, it still needs to return something. Make sense?
Yeah, maybe it would just help if we like add the return statement, say something else aside from no information found for that day.
I would, but that's not what the test is testing for. So I'm not moving it, right? And I want to stay to that because you just gave me a chat GPT response, right? Why would you make me say something else? Well, I can't. This is what the test is telling me. And you're going to encounter this in your assessment, right? And this is called test-driven development. Unfortunately, not many people like it, but it happens. Kenny had a bounce an hour ago, so okay, I just saw that. But I do apologize that this took longer than it should have. Hopefully, you got to see kind of my thought process of working with this. You kind of sometimes have to take it one step at a time and figure out like every method that works. That was honestly my bad. I should have. I'm getting issues somewhere now again because this is not the right area. There we go. Okay, the test ran good. I just have a bunch of print statements I need to get rid of. No biggie. But I ran 5 tests, no issues. I got okay, no failures, good to go. I just have a bunch of print statements for my debugging. No biggie. But that's exactly what you're going to encounter when you go through your assessment. Highly recommend. What I really recommend is you build your program, and as you build something, you test out what you're doing, right? Because then you go into an issue, and it's not necessarily that your code isn't always working. Sometimes it'll work, but it's not doing it exactly how your test is asking it from you. For example, the error message, right? I was doing it right. I should be able to catch this exception and do something, but the test wanted me that no, it has to stop your code and raise this exception, right? So it's always important to kind of just test out your methods as you're going through, because it makes it a little bit harder to try debug once you get to the end of it and you have so many methods to go through and they're dependent on other classes and methods. Does that make sense?
I just noticed I'm getting an invalid like escape sequence in line 35 on the test file as an error
Line
message.
35, invalid.
Yeah, the stand equals lemon stand parentheses lemon slash s. I think it's saying that slash s is an invalid escape sequence. I mean, maybe it's probably further up. You just have a lot of print statements and stuff. That's what, because for me, I don't have all
In the
that.
test file?
Yeah, in the test file.
I am in the test file. I haven't added anything in the test file.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you may just not see it. You may just need to scroll up in your terminal just to see the message.
Invalid. I don't. I don't see it.
Hmm.
We'll have it in a bit. It's already 9:02. I don't want to keep you guys waiting here. Thank you guys for being patient with me. As you saw,
I mean, all the tests passed, so I mean, I guess it
okay.
doesn't anyway.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I could easily just have the answers pulled up and I could code along to the answers. I don't do that on purpose, so you guys can kind of see me going through it. There's times when I do it. It depends on the assignment and time restraints. But specifically this one, I really want you guys to see me kind of code along from scratch, just reading it and kind of trying to figure it out. You guys saw me try to debug the issues that we encounter, reading the tests, and that's kind of how it's supposed to go. You know, how the tests are going to yell at you, what they tell you, and how to encounter where the issue is going. It's usually the assertion. The assertion is what you want to see. Look at the test case. What is it asserting? Okay, what is this variable that's passing within the assertion that is comparing to my what should be the right answer and what is my function doing and how is it comparing it and what is it actually returning? Right? Once you read that, you kind of infer like, okay, so it's testing this function. My function in the test case is returning this, but it's supposed to be this. Why is it not doing that? And you go to your function and you figure out why is this function not returning whether it's text, this string, right? You know, this integer, this float. Maybe the float isn't formatted right, like Tim had brought up, right? It could be multiple things, but that's how you essentially approach these situations. I don't want to take any more of your time, right? Everybody's time is precious. We're 3 minutes over. If you have no further questions for me, that's going to conclude the LemonadeStand.py. Tomorrow, we're going to start the reading and writing files, and hopefully maybe even start setting up for the Space Invaders that's going to be taking place on Friday. I will stay here a little bit longer if anybody has any questions. I might have confused you a little bit at the end with debugging and stuff. Hopefully, I didn't, but if not, I'm here to answer any questions. Besides that, you guys have a good rest of your night. Thank you.